Wow, so you won't eat animals, but you see no problem with the mass murder of plants? Pretty kingdomist of you to discriminate against vegetables just because they don't have a brain or central nervous system. Plants have feelings too, you know. Plants feel pain. Checkmate, vegans.
I am so sorry.
That's right, it's true. Plants are conscious. The scientific establishment in the pocket of big vegan may not want you to know it, but plant consciousness has been studied for decades by some of the brightest minds of physiologists, botanists, psychics, and hypnotists. Before anyone comments saying, Theo, it's irresponsible of you to promote pseudoscience to your viewers, let me be clear. I'm not actually saying that plants experience consciousness in the same way that humans do. All I'm saying is that plants experience consciousness at a much higher level than humans do and also can read our minds. So let's get into the real science facts, the cold hard truths, just pure facts and knowledge and nothing else. In the US, the pioneer of plant consciousness research was Cleve Backster, a former interrogation specialist for the CIA and proud proponent of the polygraph, the lie detector tests that have since been found to not be very accurate or effective. They don't work on humans, that is, but they work great on plants. One day in 1966, a florist in Baxter's building was having a going out of business sale, so he bought a Dracaena massingiana, took it up to his office, and hooked one of its leaves up to a polygraph, because why the hell not? Polygraphs have galvanic response detectors, which are intended to pick up on weak electric currents in the body when people have an intense emotional response, like fear or pain. And when Backster hooked up a leaf of this Dracaena, he noticed a response on the chart similar to what he would expect from a human. So then he thought, what can I do to test this further? I need to make this plant feel fear and pain.
Then, at 13 minutes, 55 seconds chart time, the thought entered my mind to burn the leaf. I didn't verbalize the idea, I didn't touch the plant, I didn't touch the equipment. Yet the plant went wild. The pen jumped right off the top of the chart. The only thing it could have been reacting to was the mental image.
The plant read his mind and knew to be afraid. Baxter then tried actually burning the leaves, but the fear was so intense already that he couldn't see a difference. So he continued with his research, most notably conducting an experiment in which live shrimp were dropped into boiling water, and then at the moment the shrimp died, the plants had a strong emotional response.
Once, I was on an airplane and had with me a little battery-powered galvanic response meter. Just as the flight attendants started serving lunch, I said to the man sitting next to me, "You want to see something interesting?" I put a piece of lettuce between the electrodes, and when people started to eat their salads, we got some reactions, but they stopped as the leaves went into shock.
I love imagining this random man just sitting on a plane, eating a salad, and then Cleve Backster is all like, you know your lettuce? It suffers when you eat it. In fact, all of the vegetables on this plane suffer because they're all empathically connected. Scientists since have tried to replicate Baxter's findings, but have never found any remotely similar results. But of course, that's because you can't find these results if you don't believe. Baxter's explanation for scientists' failures was that these experiments only work if you're operating with sincere intent. So if you think about burning plants but you don't actually intend to, then the plants can sense that and have no reason to be afraid. The experiments also need to be completely spontaneous. If you plan them in advance, the plants will know what you're going to do ahead of time and might not cooperate, especially if you're some close-minded asshole scientist who they can't fucking stand. The through line of Baxter's explanations is that consciousness research simply cannot be reproducible, because efforts at control or at scientific objectivity prevent the researcher from forming the necessary emotional bonds with their plants. You need to let your guard down. You need to be yourself. Your plants need to see the authentic you. Let them in. Let them love you for who you are. Outside of his plant research, Baxter also had a few other scientific breakthroughs that I think are worth mentioning. He found that chicken eggs are conscious, as well as yogurt, and so he had men ejaculate and then hooked their sperm up to a galvanic response meter, and then the sperm donors did poppers, and
When the donor inhaled, the sperm went wild. There was no way, however, that I could continue that research. It would have been scientifically sound, but politically stupid. The dedicated skeptics would undoubtedly have ridiculed me, asking where my masturbatorium was, and so on.
That's not plant related, obviously. I'm just mentioning it so that you're all aware that Cleve Backster was a reliable source who did a lot of important work. But anyway, he explained all of these findings through the concept of primary perception. Essentially, our five senses are limited. They're partial. We perceive some things, but we don't perceive others. We can choose where to look. We can choose to look away. But there's an extrasensory form of perception, primary perception, that's unmediated by the eyes, ears, mouth, nose, and skin. It's a true, full perception of everything. That's what plants experience. That's what yogurt experiences. That's what sperm experiences. But humans just aren't ready for it.
I suspect that when a person is spiritually advanced enough to handle such perceptions, she or he will become properly tuned in. Until then, it might be best not to be tuned in, because of the damage we could cause by mishandling the received information.
Several other researchers throughout the 60s and 70s picked up on Backster's work. Teenage hypnotist Marcel Vogel found that primary perception is more alive in children than in adults, because they're more able to pick up on the, quote, life force, or cosmic energy surrounding all living things, through which a person and a plant become one. Vogel also found that this empathic connection between humans and plants can hold across long distances, with some other dude, Randall Fontes, speculating that maybe this energy can in fact move faster than the speed of light. Many of you have likely heard the claim that playing music for plants helps them grow. That claim was popularized by another big Backster fan when music major Dorothy Redlack took a biology gen ed requirement in college. She was a grandmother who decided to go to college herself after the last of her 5 children had graduated. And when she had to do an experiment for this mandatory biology class, she decided to play musical tones for some plants. She did 5 minutes of B, 5 minutes of D, 5 minutes of silence, and then had this repeat on a loop. Initially, the plants were into it, they were thriving, but after 2 weeks they started to yellow, and after 3 weeks they were dead. Now, Dorothy was a very good gardener, so clearly the problem was that the plants were getting bored. So she started using a variety of different music, and discovered that plants love Beethoven, Brahms, and Schubert, adore Indian sitar music, but hate rock music and absolutely despise acid rock. When she played them Led Zeppelin or Jimi Hendrix, they leaned far away from the speakers and started to climb the glass walls of their chamber trying to escape. That led her to wonder, if rock music is doing so much harm to these plants, what is it doing to the teens?
When I saw the poor, bedraggled, bent-over plants in the acid rock chambers, I commented to the professor that they looked like the people seen at the rock festivals.
Redlack felt it was important that we recognize the lessons that plants are trying to teach us. If we listen to the plants, we'll understand that rock music is degrading the minds of the younger generations.
Rock music has evidently been necessary to certain segments of youth culture for the purpose of creating a mass identity, excusing the individual from developing one of his own. This is a great relief. A feeling of being in limbo associated by some psychologists with the subconscious desire for the peace and security of the fetal state. The double rhythm of much rock music, slow rocking coupled with a steady, fast beat, is much like the rhythm that bombards the unborn baby in the womb. When hypnotized by this music, are they saying we reject life and wish we hadn't been born?
Yes? You know, it's pretty amazing how Dorothy Redlack just coincidentally has exactly the same music opinions as her plants. She must be extremely well musically trained for her taste to so perfectly align with the cosmic truth of objective musical quality that the plants have revealed to us. Marijuana, though, might disagree. Redlack went on to do experiments on marijuana plants, speculating that maybe they would like acid rock more, the little miscreants.
I am anxious to start this project because of a letter received from 2 boys in a church-related college who heartily disagreed with the implications of my earlier report. They told me they had 3 marijuana plants growing on top of a stereo speaker, which plays nothing but rock 24 hours a day, and the plants were thriving beautifully.
I know what you're thinking. How can we use our new knowledge of plant perception for technological innovation? Let's get disruptive, change the game, pivot to plant. Pierre-Paul Savin was an electronics specialist from New Jersey, who after hearing an interview with Backster on the radio, claims he had a psychic flash and then used a high-voltage generator to put 27,000 volts through his body and create an electronic Ouija board, after which he had some great ideas for plant-based technology. He made a toy train that was activated by a philodendron's emotional response when Savin gave himself electric shocks. He then suggested that a similar mechanism could be used to start a car, open a garage door, or detect terrorists at the airport. There's something sort of horrifying about a lot of this research, I think. These researchers claimed to wholeheartedly believe that plants have feelings, that they feel pain, that they can suffer. But more often than not, their experiments involved immense cruelty to the plants, setting them on fire, threatening them, extrasensorily transmitting them pain, eating their loved ones, making them listen to rock music. Backster talked about sincerity of intent. And like, okay dude, but wasn't your intent to do a bunch of psychological torture? Even if you don't believe in plant sentience, there's something disturbing about that intent to cause pain. That said, it wasn't all about pain. Savin also tested plant responses to joy and pleasure.
On holiday with a girlfriend at his cottage, he established that his plants, 80 miles away, would react with very high peaks on the tone oscillator to the acute pleasure of sexual climax, going right off the top at the moment of orgasm. All of which was very interesting and could be turned into a commercially marketable device for jealous wives to monitor their philandering husbands by means of a potted begonia.
I love science, I love technology, so there you have it. Plants are conscious, they can read our minds, they can feel our feelings, but what do we do with this information? How do we integrate it into our lives? Like, I'm a vegetarian, does this mean that the ethical thing for me to do is just to stop eating altogether? Yes? Let's imagine, as a hypothetical, that I were to not actually believe all of the true plant facts I've been telling you throughout this video. Let's pretend, even though nothing could be further from the truth, that I thought it was all pseudoscientific nonsense. If I felt that way, as a result of being incredibly stupid and wrong, then what might I make of all of this? Well, I would maybe want to briefly look first at the relationship between this pseudoscience and actual plant science. One of the unfortunate consequences of this history is that it's led to self-censorship among some contemporary plant scientists, as they avoid using language that they feel could be compared to New Age nonsense. But there are reasons to think that plants could have some form of sentience. They can communicate, trees send chemical warnings when they're in distress, they make what some might call decisions, they move towards water and sunlight, they seem to have recognition of the self, in that roots can tell whether a root is their own or another plant's in determining whether to compete for space. There's also some recent research suggesting that plants might have memory or learning. I don't want to get into it. This is very heated in plant science circles. There's a lot of drama, but I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest that, you know, like, we all evolved from a common ancestor. We don't really know how consciousness works. Maybe plants do experience a degree of sentience. I do think it's unreasonable to suggest that this sentience is some kind of higher cosmic truth. There is something alluring about the idea of primary perception. In human life, our perception is always fractured, filtered through our own subjectivity and through the limitations of our 5 pathetic senses. But primary perception is full. A pure, unfiltered truth shared by everyone and everything. It's this beautiful interconnectedness and unity. When we have that unity, there's a weight that's lifted. We're no longer faced with the burdens of personhood, of individualism, of agency. We're part of a whole. Your pain is my pain, your lettuce's pain is my lettuce's pain. That kind of unity seems to be at the center of many of these plant perception claims. They've discovered this beautiful, deeper reality, while the fucking scientists, because of their obsession with hierarchy and control, because of their authoritarian desire to put the plants in their place, are denying the poetic truth of spiritual oneness. But then I look at what these researchers were doing with their supposed discoveries, and I'm not so convinced. I mean, you've got Cleve Backster showing off his dominance to the plants by torturing and threatening them. You've got Pierre-Paul Savin exploiting plant suffering for the advancement of human technology, or you've got Dorothy Redlac using her plants to argue that rock music is degrading the social fabric of society. The teens need to stop with their drugs and rock concerts and listen to some Beethoven with their philodendrons. These people gesture at the beautiful interconnectedness of all life, but they aren't promoting solidarity with plants. They aren't treating plants as our moral peers. They're using this image of unity to build order in the ways they see fit. They're using it for self-interest, exploitation, and control. Imagine if I went into your home uninvited, repeatedly poked at your forehead asking, "Is anyone in there?" and despite all your protestation, proceeded to give you a brain scan just to check. That's what you're doing when you ask for scientific evidence of plant consciousness. I tried to deny it for a long time. I tried to convince myself that plants couldn't feel, couldn't think, couldn't hurt. I wanted desperately to live in a world in which it was possible to avoid creating suffering. Sure, I don't actually avoid it all the time. I crush bugs, I hurt people's feelings, and as much as I hate to admit it, I participate in a capitalist economy. I bought this lettuce from Whole Foods, a subsidiary of Amazon. But at least in my mind, it was possible to avoid creating suffering. I could go vegan, I could make my own clothes, I could separate myself completely from the realm of conscious beings and go waste away on a mountain. Even if I didn't, I could imagine it was possible to avoid the moral consequences of simply being alive. But no, plants feel pain. I cause them pain. And the only way to avoid it is to cause myself pain, to cause the bacteria in my stomach with their rich internal lives untold agony. At last, I've been tuned in to the beautiful unity of all things, and I wish like hell that I could tune it out.